Third-party titles can do a lot to bolster the success of a Nintendo console release, and the original Switch had some real surprises in its life cycle. From The Witcher 3 to Doom Eternal to Skyrim, the Switch never fails to impress with the games it somehow brings to portable hardware. But of course, the handheld gaming landscape has changed again in recent years with the introduction of the Steam Deck and other portable PC devices, pushing the limits on what can be achieved in the palms of your hands. So with the Switch 2 supposedly getting a considerable bump in power, let's take a look at a few third-party games we'd like to see make it to this new console. Hal from GamesRadar here, and welcome to Switch On, where we talk all things Nintendo Switch 2. Starting strong, Baldur's Gate 3 was a phenomenon, one of the games of the decade. It really had the gaming community by the, sensitives. Baldur's Gate 3 was everywhere, received overwhelmingly positive reviews, and remains to this day one of the most popular games of all time. Originally exclusive to PC during its early access, after its full release, it eventually made its way to console on the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S in September and December of 2023 respectively, both vastly outspecking the Switch by a large margin. However, the biggest surprise was how well this behemoth runs on Steam Deck. There are caveats, with graphic fidelity and FPS being nerfed considerably, but it is a fully playable and, dare I say, enjoyable experience handheld. Baldur's Gate 3 could be the Witcher 3 of this generation, and getting it to run on an arguably more accessible handheld console would be nothing short of a massive win. Sticking with RPGs, we have Elden Ring. When Dark Souls Remastered released for the Switch, it was something of an oddity. Putting aside for a second that this title set a precedent in its heyday, establishing a format that's proven endlessly popular with the hardest of hardcore gamers, its release on the Switch was, how to put this delicately, unorthodox? If you were to think of the least Nintendo game, it would probably either be a From Software or a Doom title, yet both made it to the Switch. But where Dark Souls started a gaming paradigm, Elden Ring epitomized it. Its open world full of beautiful yet haunting art design and truly terrifying boss encounters. It's no wonder Elden Ring remains firmly in the gaming zeitgeist, especially after the fantastic DLC Shadow of the Erdtree released last year. Nintendo has made concerted efforts over the years to expand its hardware's audience outside of its comfort zone, with powerhouses like Dark Souls and Doom Eternal. So with that initiative in mind, Elden Ring seems like a no-brainer. Okay, one last RPG, and CD Projekt Red's other victory at that. Cyberpunk 2077. It's been a rough road for Cyberpunk. When it first released in 2020, Cyberpunk 2077 was a bit of a farce. The epitome of this game isn't ready to release, but it released anyway. The controversy culminated in its PS4 listing on the PlayStation Store being pulled, with refunds issued to early adopters. However, CD Projekt didn't give up on the juggernaut, and within a few years, Cyberpunk 2077 was much closer to the groundbreaking experience promised throughout its development. While often considered one of the most demanding games to play of this generation, following this continued development, even the PS4 and Xbox One versions run pretty well today, all things considered. Helped by the title's seemingly equal emphasis on technical performance and narrative prowess, making concessions on the former doesn't necessarily detract from the latter. And similarly to Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk is a perfectly competent experience on the Steam Deck. I genuinely believe Cyberpunk 2077 to be one of the most important gaming experiences of the last few years, and opening up that experience to a whole new audience would be well worth it.
Wake the f*** up, samurai. We have a city to burn.
Xbox 360, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStations 3, 4, and 5, and PC. What platforms didn't this institution of a game release to? Well, obviously, anything Nintendo. It seems bonkers in hindsight that this title, determined as it is to conquer all markets ever, never made it onto a Nintendo console. True, the 12-year-old open-world city of Los Santos may have been just a little too much for the original Switch, but the Switch 2. Now, Grand Theft Auto on a Nintendo console isn't a completely unheard of premise. There was the DS release of GTA Chinatown Wars, and of course the quote-unquote definitive edition of the GTA trilogy on the Switch, which was, well, you know. And also, let's not forget that after years of anticipation, GTA 6 is finally on its way. And in light of this, the future of GTA 5 has been brought into question. So what better way to give 5 one last lease of life than porting it to a brand new console? Okay. Yes, these are two very different franchises, not one game, but bear with me on this. 2025 really is a weird time to be an Xbox flagship franchise, with the days of Xbox exclusivity seemingly coming to an end. After a shift in focus from Microsoft to equally support PC and console releases seemingly working well for the giant, there have been rumors and murmurs of massive titles like Halo and Forza coming to their competitors' hardware. This came to fruition with the announcement of the upcoming release of Forza Horizon 5 on the PlayStation 5 this April. It's finally happening. And if it's capable enough, the Switch 2 would be a fantastic place to play this masterclass of an arcade racer. As for Halo, well, it's been reported and corroborated that the Master Chief Collection, the fantastic anthology of the first 6 Halo FPS titles, is on its way to the PS5, with rumblings of indeed making its way to the Switch 2 as well. Xbox has on record stated that they're open to bringing their titles to Nintendo consoles, and the Switch 2, if powerful enough, could be just the opportunity to reach that coveted Nintendo audience. Alright, digressing even further from what this video was originally about, I'd like to touch on the Pokemon franchise. It's completely baffling that not one entry of the mainline Pokemon series from previous hardware made it to the Switch. The 3DS was the closest thing we've had so far to an ultimate Pokemon machine, with generations 4 to 7 able to be played natively, and 1 and 2 playable via Virtual Console. And while you couldn't play Generation 3, you could play their Generation 6 remakes. So that's every mainline Pokemon region playable on one console. And you'd think that Nintendo would have carried this onto the Switch, but they didn't. Despite its shortcomings, most notably the recent installment's underwhelming performance and presentation on the original Switch, Pokemon remains one of the most successful franchises exclusive to Nintendo hardware. And surely, sales of the first 2 generations of games on the 3DS would have displayed this demand. Yes, there's probably some legal shenanigans that we don't know about, but surely resolving what's ever stopping Nintendo getting these old games onto the Switch 2 would pay dividends by the truckload. So, what third-party games do you think will make it to the Switch 2? And more importantly, what games would you like to see? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time for Switch On.